I'm excited to introduce our two features, Judy Bebelaar and Katharine Harer. Judy Bebelaar taught in San Francisco public schools for 37 years. Her poetry has been published widely in magazines, in 7 anthologies, including The Widow's Handbook, Kent State University Press, forward by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and in a chapbook, Walking Across the Pacific. Judy's nonfiction book, And Then There Were None, Teenagers of People's Temple from High School to Jonestown, written with Ron Cabral, has won 10 awards. And our other feature is Katharine Harer. Katharine's poetry has been published in 7 small press collections. Jazz and Other Hot Subjects was published in 2016 by Bomb Shelter Press, and Deconfliction was published by FMSBW Press in 2020. Her nonfiction projects include a book about women who played pro baseball, an homage to Pablo Neruda, and personal essays about travel. Katharine's essay, De les Données, appeared in Best Women's Travel Writing 2016. Her poetry has appeared in recent anthologies, including Fog and Light, Welcome to the Resistance, California Fire and Water, and Wild Gods, the ecstatic and contemporary poetry and prose. She teaches at Skyline Community College and San Francisco Writing Salon and serves as an organizer and co-VP of the College District Teachers Union. Katharine grew up in San Francisco and lives in San Rafael with her husband, Rob, and her dog, Ozzy. Please welcome Katharine Harer and Judy Bebelaar.
Thank you, everybody. So Judy and I are doing something a little different tonight. Because she and I have known each other for so long and worked together in 2 different inner city high schools in San Francisco doing creative writing, we thought it would be fun for us and for you if we did what is sometimes called an interwoven reading. I just call it a back and forth reading, but that means that we'll be trading poems, and we've picked several themes, and our poems are sort of loosely around those themes. And so you'll be hearing both of us back and forthing. And let's see. I guess the other thing I was going to say is that Judy and I have stayed friends from the very beginning. She taught me to wear big earrings and makeup. I was just too much of a nature girl. And then I met Judy. I was like, oh, I want to be glamorous like her. So we've been friends for a long time, and we are now, and have been for a number of years, in a writing group together called the Hilly Gals. And at least one of our Hilly Gals friends is with us tonight, Toby Kaplan. So that's my part of the intro. And then Judy has her part of the intro. So I take it away, Judy.
Well, Katharine has done a great job of explaining why we're braiding our reading, but she didn't say that very often we would go someplace together and we would be in nearly the same outfit. You notice tonight we're both wearing black. Just happens. And one of the things, well, first let me also make a slight correction. The nonfiction book that I wrote is And Then They Were Gone, because you'll be lost in Agatha Christie if you go to And Then There Were None. And it's about the students that Ron and I knew who sadly Jim Jones sent to Jonestown. But it is a really good book, thanks to them and their poetry and all the people that helped me with that book. I wanted to explain one thing, because in what I'm reading tonight, there are 2 husbands. My first husband, John, died in 1991. Katharine got the students in the creative writing class to make a beautiful book of poetry, which I brought to him in the hospice. And after he died, I was at the same school, and I talked to my students personally, as I always did. And I found myself saying, my husband, the surfer, and talking about him, and then talking about my boyfriend, who is now my second husband. And I could see the kids looking at me like, Miss Bebelaar, a husband and a boyfriend? So I wanted to let you know too, that there are 2 different loves and husbands in my poem, and I still love both of them very much. So I'm going to start with a poem called Rhinos Roaming the Louvre. And it was written when the Le Pyramide, which was new then outside the Louvre, was just there and very controversial. And it's my boyfriend, Love Allen, who's in this poem. Rhinos roaming the Louvre. It was a crazy dream. Rhinos roaming the Louvre. Le merveille, le marvel, le prodige. Someone said, that's the way of the world now. And I have to pause because, as usual, I forgot to put my glasses on. Let me read that line again correctly. Le miracle, la merveille, le prodige. Someone said, that's the way of the world now. But it seemed to me it just might be wonderful. The rhinos stepping out of a late 16th century tapestry, gracefully, careful not to break the brittle gold threads. And as they roamed, they alchemically transformed marble statues with naked breasts into rolling golden savannas, turned gilt-framed oils of hedonistic picnics into wild, tumbling rivers. I remember that summer of '94, glad to be still alive after cancer, after the swaths of bandages, after climbing out of my opium cocoon, coming back into the world. I said to my love, if I'm going to die, I want to go to France before I do. And if I'm going to live, I want to go to celebrate. In Paris, the taxi we took, the driver sullen and silent until we passed the Louvre. And I asked him, aimez-vous le pyramide? He hated it. And when I agreed, he hated it and loved telling me so. And when I agreed, I think he loved me too, because he loved the Louvre and he would have loved the rhinos roaming the Louvre, those beautiful ancient beasts roaming the Louvre.
My first poem is called Repairs, and it's from this book, Jazz and Other Hot Subjects. And I'm reading this poem in memory of a very important person in my life who passed last year, as so many people did. It's called Repairs for Joe. He stands in a curve of sun in my driveway, rubbing the oil from my engine between his fingers. He fixes things, they told me, makes things work. The doorknob that slips off into your hand, the toilet that won't swallow. He persuades roses to surrender their harvest, coaxes a tuberose into fragrant bloom. Tomatoes under his hands are redder, juicier, more abundant. He arrives in my kitchen with pots, sharpened knives, 3 kinds of mushrooms, prepares a meal with stunning architecture, flavor bridges, paths that circle inward through caramelized onions, roasted bell peppers, red wine. He notes the dripping faucet, the plugged drain, the way I hold my head after lovemaking away for a moment. He wants to mend all of it. Everything that is broken. And then I have another one. And this one is called Petaluma. And I didn't choose it only because Aquas is in Petaluma, Aquas Cafe in this series, which I love, but because I like my poem. And it's in my newer book, Deconfliction. And it started in our group, the group that Judy and I are part of, and that Tovi is, Kaplan is also, and some other wonderful people. Petaluma. My grandparents made a bed for me on their back porch. I watched the lights of cars on the highway, the points of stars in the black sky. I was 3, carried here by my mother, away from my father, his memory leaching from me. Feral cats, small dark ghosts, gathered at the side door for food, never for touch. My grandmother put out saucers of milk. They wouldn't drink when we watched. I wanted to keep them and name them, but they didn't need me. I sat on the living room floor making families out of buttons collected in a golden can. My grandfather took me to the chicken house and placed a baby chick in my cupped hands. It trembled inside its feathery weight, its small breakable bones. He stroked it with one finger and told me it would grow big and round, and he would sell it to Henry from Chinatown, and everyone would love the tender, sweet meat of this chicken. I stretched out my hands to my grandfather to take the chick, and he put it back on the wooden floor where it joined the humming, pale yellow cloud. I knew then I didn't belong to the shivering chicks or the rangy cats. I belonged to the highway and the stars. I belonged to my grandparents. I knew that.
And this is called synthesis. The room went white. The doctor's words, a buzzing of wasps, and God was nowhere in the loud no color. Then Alan held on to me, pulled me out of the cotton batting of morphine where God also did not exist. And still the electric current between us. In the bed he made with his own hands of Port Orford cedar. His hand cupping the breast with the crescent scar, moving down my belly, concentric rings of light, moving out until there was nowhere. His body ended and mine began, and God was there in the fire. And still we sleep in the bed, make love in the cedar bed. The wood darker now, but the bed still the boat where we set out into night together, leaving day behind, turning and turning under the miraculous stars.
Are you doing another one, Judy?
I think I'm not. I have to look. I think it's your turn now. Yes, you have 2 poems.
You know what I noticed is we both had stars in our poems and we didn't plan it.
I know.
That's how we are.
Stars.
If you guys hear a bad sound in the background, my dog has a collapsing trachea.
Oh,
And
no.
if he does it again, he's going to have to be taken out of the room. No, he's not like dying or anything.
I have to make a joke. I have to make a pun. You have stars, but you didn't plan it.
Oh.
Okay,
Dude, I didn't even know you were a punster, and I've known you for so long. Okay. So I'm next, and that was sort of our first cluster. This is our second. Cluster doesn't sound like a very good word, but this is our second section.
Cluster of stars.
Yeah, there you go. Cluster of stars. Okay, this is our second section. Let's see. What am I doing? Okay. Here we go. Okay. I grew up in San Francisco, and this poem takes place there. It's called Music Lessons. Alone in the quiet afternoons on the brown couch in my parents' living room, I'd put on their party records, the ones they drank martinis to, songs that kept the grown-ups in each other's arms. I listened to every word, Fats Waller, Billie Holiday, Frankie and Ella, teaching me about sadness under street lamps, small apartments where men and women walk the floors, pour whiskey, manage to love. My mother talked about Frankie like an old boyfriend, lowering her eyelids, nodding her head dreamily when she said his name. I began to associate his throaty stops and starts with young love, with longing that was sweet, hunger you slept on like a soft pillow. I'd sit by our window facing a row of identical houses, imagining New York City in black and blue, jazz clubs where the songs made a fire under your skin. I'd sing these songs alone in the backseat of our car, on long dark trips, my parents' voices in the front seat, low murmurs, my own small voice cupped into my hand, crooning the man I love into the speeding night. And then I have another one in this little section. This is also from this book. This is called Lucky Seven. There used to be a bar way down on Market Street. I'm not sure it's there. I don't know what's anywhere anymore, but it was actually called the 7-Eleven Club. So maybe somebody remembers it, but I misremembered the name. So I called my poem Lucky Seven. And when I realized I'd misremembered it, I liked the title, so I just kept it. Lucky Seven. I love jukeboxes and dark middle-aged bars, old songs like signs of family. 3 college boys talk about ghosts. Do you believe in them? Yeah, I'm Catholic. I press 189, Otis Redding, try a little tenderness. The bartender calls me lovely and spikes my drink. The guy next to me orders a double martini off work from the shoe repair across the street. I don't think my dad's gonna come back, one boy says. Mine either, I think. Otis Redding's been dead. Sarah's gone now. The bronze curves of her voice are gone. I miss her like I won't let myself miss my aunt, murdered in her nightgown in that cow town at the tip of Highway 5. Bloodstained, unreachable. I press 205, Benny Goodman, someone to watch over me. I can see my parents stopping in at this bar in the early years before children and dinner on the table. I press 105, Duke Ellington, Satin Doll. Sam, the shoe man, sings along. Hey, when you make love to your old man, think of me. He laughs for a long time. Tell me what that song is, one boy yells to his buddy standing over the jukebox. Satan Doll, he says, knowing it's wrong, but not how to make it right. It's all right, Sam says, it's all the same, and buys me another drink. I'm seeing my mother in Manhattan, single, cultivating a taste for scotch. I'm feeling the starch and cotton on my lips where I pressed my lipstick mouth against your white shirt. I'm thinking about the love poems I can't write, the water I can't name, Hudson, Harlem, East River. Give me a hint. Monk's gone, Chet Baker's passed, Billy's long gone. I'm not gonna let it get to me. I press 267 on the box and get sophisticated lady. The bartender hums along with his rag.
And this is called Berkeley, 1967, if you remember. The door was always open at Arnold's house on Valley Street, and someone was always dropping by. Sometimes it was John and me. He'd say, maybe they're home. I'd say, let's see. From out on the porch, we could hear blood, sweat, and tears chanting, ride a painted pony, let the spinning wheel spin. Or the Chambers Brothers, time with its psychedelic essence, its hypnotic beat. Or let's get it on, Marvin Gaye filling the house with soul. Excuse me. The cat underfoot would greet us at the door, Susan in the kitchen making angel pie, or John would be hoping the special brownies made with seeds and stems. On Friday nights, we'd come by sometimes with Christy, 3 or 4, at just about 10, put her sleeping on the sofa, Susan and Arnold and their son Kevin sleeping too. John and I would be off to the Steppenwolf dance on tables or chairs if need be, until the music went off when the bar closed at 2. I'm not sure if there was no need to worry then, Christy asleep, the door unlocked, or if we just didn't worry with Arnold and Susan in the next room on the waterbed. Now, no one drops in on people anymore. You have to have a reason. Text before you come. In those days, there was always time. Remember the Steppenwolf? Anybody?
I never went there, but I knew about it.
It was fun.
But I remember all the songs. Am I next, Judy?
Yep.
Okay. So we're doing, I don't know if you can tell, but sort of music. And then I'm also going to read a poem that I wrote that is to a poet. Francisco Alarcón, who left us in 2016. Probably some of you remember Francisco. He was a lovely, lovely person. Francisco Alarcón is the name of my poem. So now we're dying, we poets who scrabbled for work to buy the time to sit and wait for a poem like a voice through the veins of a phone we hope will hear, hope will speak to us, who drove miles and miles in our beaters to read to 15 or 20 if we were lucky, half of them there for the wine or hiding from the cold, who cheered us silently later, much later, stirring their soup or lying in their beds, when something we said rose up inside the square walls of their apartments, and they said to themselves, that poet got it right. She got it right. We drink and talk and salute one another or forget to. We mean to. I meant to salute Francisco. He had to die to remind me that I knew him and liked him, his poems, his large smiling face. One time he forgot to come to a reading I made for him, but I forgave him, or if I didn't, I do now. I'm sorry for holding on to something so small, Francisco, when you are so large, grinning like a child and thick with heart.
And this poem is from a wonderful book of ekphrastic poetry that Diane Frank edited. And it's called Rocks and Stones. Diane is out there among you in the audience. Blue Light Press is her press. Rocks and Stones. After Mobius Arch, Alabama Hills, photographed by Tim Truby. Carved by sand and wind, this ancient ochre rock, like a kneeling dancer, arched in a backbend, head resting on the earth, her rocky spine framing a moment's blue sky, billowing clouds, a field of worn stones. Some like fallen bodies, some peaked like hands clasped in supplication. My father's gift to me when I was 7, a box of specimen rocks, rose quartz, obsidian, flint, chert. The sandstone hill near our house held fossils from an ancient sea, rust-colored whorls, curves of mussels, limpets, clams. On my altar, I've placed rocks from Año Nuevo embedded with etches of cockles and clams, heart-shaped rocks, and a granite stone my student Huang painted with a gecko. While my husband was out surfing, I'd go for a run, choose a rock or a shell to bring to him when he came out of the water, grinning like a kid. On our last trip to the North Shore, the surfing mecca on Oahu, I brought him an egg-shaped beach stone. One morning when he felt too weak to get up and surf, a portent we tried to ignore. I learned when we got home the rock was a hina, a woman's prayer stone. When I placed it in his hand, he clasped it, held on, took it home. All that year, we knelt before it, made offerings of plumeria and tea. After he died that June, I gave the hina back to the sea. And tea there is T-I, and it's the leaf that's often used in bridegroom's necklays at weddings.
Are you doing another one, Jude?
Am I? I'm looking. Yeah, I'm doing another one.
Okay.
This one's called That Unstable Object of Desire. And the epigraph for this, as well as the title, is from an exhibit at a museum, at a gallery in Florence. And the author of the epigraph is the photographer. In the oldest dreams of old men, women's breasts still remain medals, emblems of their love. Rooms full of breasts, rooms darkened to protect the photographs. A young woman holding her shirt up with her teeth, on her head, a rhinestone diadem. Old breasts, empty, pendulous, cactus bud breasts, pears as breasts, breasts over Yosemite Falls. The Arbus waitress at a nudist camp, hers pert and tanned, her order book tucked into her apron pocket. I'm remembering nursing Christy that night coming home in the car, the perfect arc of the Sonoma moon in the sky. I'm thinking of teepees, yurts, hogans, kivas, of California tule houses, of duomos and geodesic domes. I'm thinking of the crescent scar on my right breast, of the clinical words, lumpectomy, mastectomy, of Rachel Carson, whose breasts were burned with an X-ray machine, the treatment that did not save her life. Of how that little scar saved mine and how lucky that was. I'm thinking of the women who get treatment too late or not at all. For a while in that dimly lit gallery in Florence, I wandered in the world of the breast, that unstable object of desire.
Nice, I love that, Judy.
Thank you.
So this was our, I think it was our nature and art and hope.
Yeah, it was.
So here's some nature. This poem is called In Defense of Weeds, which I'm still not sure I really feel, but for the purpose of writing a poem, I felt it. In defense of weeds. Weeds blossom madly, unscrupulously. We fear they'll strangle our better flowers, the ones we pay for at the nursery. Stronger than pretty hothouse petunias, more confident, eager to drink the rain, weeds survive the drought with green bravado, laughing their way through our yards, choking out the serious flowers with their hilarity. My body used to be a weed, a wild and hungry green blade. I loved its hungers, its uncouth weediness. The weed of my body craved dirt and wet smells, sun and the sure touch of a gardener's hands, my own or someone else's. When I pull up weeds, their roots hold on hard, fighting before they give in, refusing to leave their dark home. a small victory for the tidiness of my garden, for the petunias twirling in their fancy little girl dresses, for the weed that was my body. And I wrote this poem while looking at a painting by Wayne Thiebaud, who also passed. There is a sub-theme of death rolling under our poems, but there you go. It's there. He's a painter that I admire a lot, and I had never realized when I went to this show, as some of you probably went to it, it was like more than 10 years ago, maybe 20. It was at the Legion of Honor, and it was a really great retrospective because it showed all the different styles that Thiebaud painted in. And I didn't know that he had painted a dress. It's not a famous, it's not famous like this, right? I happen to have this on my desk. It's not famous like his cakes and his bubble gums, his gums, but he painted a dress and it really got to me. So the painting is called Yellow Dress, and so is the poem by Wayne Thiebaud. A dark blue aura spills behind yellow folds. Swirl of fabric whispers its promises. Shadows slyly tucked into creases are darker, more dangerous than the glisten of yellow. She takes it down, slips it over her head, enters through its cool alleys. Her shoulders fill its thin straps. Breasts rise to flood its heart-shaped bodice. Her pulse knocks inside its bright shapes. And I have one final poem, and then Judy's going to close us out with one final poem. And mine is new because Judy and I talked about how fun and daring it is to read new poems. So this one is newish. It's called Pandemic Summer Poem, and I wrote it in Sonoma, just a little bit north of Petaluma, as you all know, this last August. I pronounce every orange-winged butterfly a monarch. I claim them even when they're not. Every day, another monarch. I've been seeing my dead ex-boyfriend's naked body, his long, perfect penis, his smallish balls, his carved thighs. Every day, his golden body. High season summer in the crook of the pandemic. Every day, new warnings, new instructions, new deaths. At the swimming pool, a father with a round stomach carries orange-colored drinks to his daughters. He sets them on the side of the pool like an offering. They're learning not to fear the water, their mother tells me, holding their hands. The smaller one is doing the dead man's float. You surprise me every day with what you learn, the father tells the bigger one, holding her in his arms in the popsicle blue water. An orange-winged butterfly flits near me. It could be a monarch, holding its own against extinction. The girls slip underwater to look for pennies and burst back up, their faces wet and shining. Every day, another chance.
And this last poem is called Morning. It waits now before birdsong, a patient stillness. It waits for a sky full of music as it was in the old dawns here. Waits for paired monarchs, trios, a winged kaleidoscope. Waits for itself as it was before DDT, before Monsanto and monocrops, before the plundered forests. As after fire, green returns, morning light holds possibility. And that one anise swallowtail my husband photographed and framed, yesterday's gift out of the blue, says perhaps it is not yet too late. Thank you.